Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 1148. Do you have golems? Carl gave Hugo a conspiratorial smirk. You do have golems, don't you? The big mage laughed. I do have the golems. I even have more golems. The greater golem spell. I believe that the mage in your overlord group has the same one with dragon hounds. Carl nodded. Indeed she does. But if there are others in your guild who are missing it, bring them here. And bring cake. I don't want to go back to the guild house to get dinner. From the kitchen someone laughed. Relax, we are cooking. I know that it's not part of our duties here, but we enjoy cooking. One of the Dragonkin runecrafters joked. If you're short on ingredients, let me know. I've got a bunch stored that might not be in the house. A bunch of stored food was a vast understatement given how much was growing not only in the beast space but also in the tiny world. Not all of that was edible to most species, but enough of it was that they wouldn't have to fear going hungry. The Dragonkin nodded. Miss Lotus stocked up the kitchen so that everyone could make snacks when we wanted, but her definition of snack is very broad, so there is a fully stocked pantry here. Still, Carl sent a message to Davis requesting that he find enough kitchen staff for the Xylaz Guild house even if they didn't actually live here full-time. There was a portal and plenty of room for worker lodging, so he could just keep them here during their shifts and let them go home on the weekend. Got it, boss. I have a stack of applications from residents of the suburbs. I can send them over right away if you need chefs. Davis replied. Just make sure that they're not too skittish. We get a lot of totem and mythic ranked visitors, and the auras can be pretty overwhelming for those at lower ranks. Working in the Alliance House would be a nightmare of powerful aura overloads for most commander and royal ranked kitchen staff from Drod. Anyone over that rarely worked in the kitchens anymore, but Carl had faith in Davis to find him someone. A couple of minutes later the response came. They will be there in 15 minutes. They just need to pack for the week. More of the Alliance members were arriving and the atmosphere was becoming more of a party as the others realized that the tanks were all paladins now. Especially among the healers. After all, the greatest advantage of the paladins was their holy magic, which was primarily focused on defense and self-healing. Mages, if you don't have golems, please go talk to Carl. He's got the ability to give most of you the golem spell. The fee will be put on the Guild Alliance account and the Guild Masters will settle the debt in the morning. Hugo announced. That was the best news that any of the mages could have gotten. Free spells were even better than free gear. Not only would they get a new ability like the most expensive of gear, but it would also be one that would endure if they wanted to change outfits. How does the ability work? The mythic mage who had gotten the idle dress asked. You don't have golems? Carl asked. She shrugged. I never got around to buying the spell. I specialize in burst damage. Carl smiled and patted her on the head, which made her give him a confused frown. Champion Carl offers knowledge skill golem. Will be transferred to the lovely idol Annabelle. The mage laughed as the skill transferred and began to spin in a happy dance that reminded Carl a lot of a happy lotus. I get it. Monster Man is highly attuned to beast-type pets, so he can transfer skills with head pats. All you ugly guys are screwed. She laughed. The paladins just stared at her. Did she think that Carl gave them all the same treatment? No, that was clearly reserved for her. But they all followed her when she ran outside to see what she got for golems. Annabelle summoned her new golems and then stared at them in confusion. I think they're broken. Carl shrugged. What were you thinking of when you summoned them? There is a theory that the first casting can be shaped by intent. But once they're set, they're set. They both stared at the pair of mafia goons in black suits with swords in their hands and distinctly incubi horns and tails. Then Carl smirked at the mage. You were reading a romance novel before you were called over, weren't you? That's definitely the lead from a romance book. Twins no less. He added. After another moment of shock, Annabelle swapped outfits to her new dress armor and then went to pose with her mafia golem guards. There is something broken in her brain. Hugo whispered. Possibly, but now she's got golems. Carl agreed. Annabelle made her golems put their blades away but didn't dismiss them as she came back into the house. Instead, she kept them as bodyguards flanking her like she was an actual idol. In a way she was. All the myths were famous even here. But it was still funny when most of these people had known her for years and knew her as a combat mage. One of the totem-ranked mages came over and tilted her head for Carl to pat. You're corrupting them all. Hawk laughed. Carl transferred the golem skill again and she raced outside to go test the spell. It was too crowded in the main room to be summoning golems. Especially if you didn't know what size they would be. How about a handshake? A tall dragonkin man asked. You know, I just poked the paladins. The head pats are something like a running joke. Carl replied. Then he shook the mage's hand and granted the golem skill. There were many more mages who needed the skill, but the room was getting crowded already and the party was starting to overflow the main room. They would have to find their way to Carl, but the guests were good about leaving him enough space to continue granting the golem skill so that all the totem and overlord mages could have it for their next run. Even a little more damage would be a great help to all the groups, especially if someone got golems that could help tank. Tion Opal, could you please set up the upstairs for me? Just arrange the chairs and such for guests. Got it. Opal is sending her illusions to do it now. Tion replied. Opal also sent a group of them to help in the kitchen and deliver the drinks and snacks. Then one of the gargoyles led a group of demons up the stairs, nudging them toward Carl. Oh, the new hires, right? It's an impromptu party, so I will let you get settled in after. Carl greeted the man in front. No worries. Davis explained the situation and the gargoyles let us drop off our luggage on the way up. Are we doing a full dinner service or just appetizers and drinks? Appetizers and drinks. The guests have brought many of them already. I instructed them to bring snacks and cake. Chapter 1149. No More Warriors Initiative. The celebration for the tanks grew by the minute until it not only filled the main and top floors of the house but also the garden, the street outside, and many of the nearby yards. That was excellent news to Sapphire, as she had received so many more volunteers to test her class advancement theories and provide research data that could be presented to the church. The larger the sample size, the better. Especially if they were at multiple ranks. It would be a lot of work to make all those skill books, and she couldn't ask for Carl to do all the skill transfers as that would mess up the data. But she had patience. Probably more patience than the 100 warriors who were eager to become crusaders and find out what life was like as more than a basic warrior. Holy Blast really would be the best spell to try to trigger the advancement. Sensing Truth was also one of the signature skills of a crusader. But if she gave that to them instead, there was no telling if they would end up as an infiltration specialized class or if it would advance them at all. However, giving them holy magic certainly would. Today had saved her days of work gathering a suitable group of volunteers, even if these were more powerful volunteers than they had been planning to use at the start. The party was in full swing when Carl got a message from Wendy at the Drod Guild House. Mr. Carl? There is a large group of strange people here to see you. They say that the governor sent them. Right, they were still waiting for the gardeners. Constantly adding more people like this was too much hassle, and Carl was glad that it was almost over. At least he had gotten the tiny world ready for their arrival, even if he was still working to optimize the fundamental rules in the space. He should be able to continue that after they were there. It was just the expansion of the space that he really needed to do in advance. Guild masters, if you will excuse me for a moment, I need to go pick up a few more workers for the guild, and then I will return once they are settled in. Carl explained. Hugo smiled and nodded. We can sort out the chaos with the overlords later. I suspect that Lady Sapphire will be willing to help us over the next few days so that we can get better damage dealers on the main overlord rank team. Carl shook his hand and then went downstairs to use the portal instead of opening a new one to go to the guild house. What he found when he arrived was certainly not what he expected. He had been told that they were nature lovers who lived in a temple and that they didn't get along well with the towns in their area. But he hadn't expected this. The group was a mix of beastkin dragons, demons, and elves. But they were all wearing next to nothing, and what they did have on was basic tanned hide or rough cloth. How about we move this to a new location? It will help me explain. Carl suggested, then opened the tiny world's entrance for them. The elf in the lead bowed politely and then led her group through. That was when Carl noticed the real oddity. There were no men. He had been convinced to take in even more random women. Was he told about this? Probably. He must have just forgotten who they were sending. Alright, we might as well start the introduction here. These fields are all magical plants for the alchemists. Right now I've been using illusionary workers to do the gardening, but that's not optimal. To my left are the swamps, also home to many magical plants and 3 species of fish. They help balance the ecosystem, so try not to overfish them or let them overpopulate the swamp. To my right is the lake, again more fish, and the bottom of the lake has been optimized to grow water element magical crystals. There is an empty village within the mountain range over there, and that house is a replica of the guild house that we just came from. I don't know where you prefer to stay, but there is currently nobody else in here. The alchemy rooms in the guild house get regular use, as well as the dragon perches on the mountain. There should be more than enough for everyone, no need to fight for a spot to rest. Now ask any immediate questions you have and I will try to answer them. All of this is free for us to wander? Like there are no off-limits areas? The elf who was leading the group asked. Yes, it's all free for you to explore live on Maintain. In fact, visiting most of it will be a necessary part of your employment, as we've planted magical resources everywhere. Just don't mess with things that others have left here. The training grounds can be changed for use, but don't destroy the equipment left behind. The same with rooms in the guild house. Pick any empty room, don't mess with other people's stuff. There is an alchemy room through the library in the hidden city area. It's best not to mess with that at all. Alchemy is a precise process and Remy will not be happy if someone ruins a potion in progress. Carl explained. So the rule is basically just be good neighbors. Are any of the others prudish? Carl shook his head. Not particularly. There are a few dragon clerics and some magical beasts. Remy the alchemist is a Naga queen. But none of them are particularly prudish or strict about rules. The elf looked around, her eyes glowing with some sort of spell, and then turned to her group. What do you think? Is this suitable? She asked. One by one they nodded. This place is good. It's got plenty of farmland, everything else that we need, and he said that we can do what we want as long as we don't bother anyone or let the magical crops wither. That made some of them laugh. They were mostly nature goddess-aligned druids or witches and more than capable of taking care of the crops and the wilderness. You have a deal, guild master. The elf agreed. Guild employees verified. Suddenly one of the dragons transformed, revealing a shaggy green leaf-covered body. A forest dragon, Carl realized. He hadn't seen one of them in ages. But she was already gone, flying off to go splash in the lake. Thank you for your kindness, guild leader. We will assess the state of all the crops and make sure that everything is perfect. The elf explained. That seemed like a dismissal to Carl, and he turned to leave while the druids began to argue about who got to go to the best areas first and whether they should opt for indoor rooms or set up an outdoor camp. Wait, before you leave, does it rain here? This place feels like a separate space. The elf asked. Carl nodded. I have set up day and night cycles as well as weather. It rains one day a week, but the humidity is much higher around the swamp, and the temperatures aren't the same everywhere. Chapter 1150. Gardeners acquired. Carl watched as the group compromised and set up a camp by the fields, then set up cooking utensils at the camp in the swamp that was set up for the Naga visitors, and finally arranged a campsite at the shore of the lake on the edge of the beach. They also sent someone to look in the guild house replica who gave them an approving double thumbs-up gesture, and then one that Carl guessed meant that the kitchen was stocked, as the gesture looked like eating. The green dragon cleric stocked the pantry, but there should still be more space if you want to add ingredients that she didn't choose. Carl offered. The elf nodded, then began to strip down to change into an apron. Just the apron. So that's what they meant about prudes. We have great spells for creating food, and I have 1,000 years of cooking experience. If there is one thing that we don't need to fear, it is starvation. She laughed. All right, I will let everyone settle in. I come here fairly often to work on the fundamental rules in the space as well as my own knowledge. Just let me know if you need anything. Eventually he would tell her that aprons were usually worn over clothing. But if his guess was right, the minimal amount of clothing that they wore, like the thick green robes that the druids working in the swamp had changed into, were more like protective gear than fashion. Hawk laughed as he came out into the tiny world to fly around for a while and explore the space. Lotus is going to love these people. They're already working on growing coffee on the slopes of the mountain. Plus half of them are naked and planning on playing in the lake all day. That sounded like peak Lotus behavior. Druids, witches, and green dragon clerics had a lot in common. But while Carl was getting the new hires settled in to maintain the plants of the tiny world, Lotus and the others were finishing their cram session for the wedding plans. They had even planned a date. 1 month later, on the day with what Matilda had determined to be the perfect moonlight for the end of the party. It would highlight their decorations just right in the areas outside the main party area and encourage the partygoers to have more fun and drink less heavily. Nobody doubted her visions of the future. They had seen what she could do with them. The world wasn't as isolated as it seemed. It was actually connected to the immortal realm in hundreds of places. But the supreme ranked dragon kept those places hidden or locked away, and had placed a spell over them to make them less detectable on the other side. There were still a few occasions where someone tried to push through, usually in an attempt to gather slaves or servants for the immortal realm, but when they did, she would foresee it and place defenses over the area. She did it reflexively after millennia of practice, but it still needed to be done if this world was going to be protected until it could support a spell that would isolate it completely. The immortal realm could just live without one of the billions of mortal worlds to lord their supremacy over. It wasn't like they were actually short on mortal realms to plunder. Every resident of the immortal realm could have 100 mortal realm planets to themselves, and they would never run out of them. The problem was that there were only so many that were even worth plundering. Nobody wanted the ones that were completely devoid of magic, the ones which had never developed a sentient species, or the ones where the sentient species on them were entirely too hostile to be tamed. The insectoid worlds under the beast and spider gods. Definitely in low demand. Not zero, there was a market for everything if you looked long enough, but far from what anyone would consider to be sought after. Once upon a time, Matilda had considered being one of those immortals who would claim an entire world for themselves to experiment upon and exploit. But when she looked into the future, it was utterly boring. With too much influence from herself, the outcomes were utterly predictable. Complete randomization led to patterns of probability and her mind was too sharp to miss them. So she had remained here where she was born and nominated herself as protector as she watched the world advance and regress, make brilliant empires and tear them down with poor decisions. Just the right amount of chaos to keep her life enjoyable. Tell me again why the wedding has to be in 1 month? Don't you usually need like half a year for everyone to plan their attendance, get time off, travel to the location and such? Dana asked as they were packing to return to their daily lives. Because the traditional wedding ceremony involves a spell that can only be done when the celestial alignment and magical state of the planet are right, and the next one for you and Carl is more than 2 years away if we miss this one. If we wait that long, he's probably going to be a myth and his power will be dragging him away from you. But once we do the wedding and the soul bond is in place, that won't be a concern. Matilda explained. How a soul bond would change the difference in their power levels was something that the Chaos Dragon always managed to skim over using. You will understand once it's in place as an excuse. So Dana packed the last of her belongings from the resort in the Chaos Realm where Matilda had brought them to plan and followed everyone through the portal back to Xylaz. Lotus laughed as she stepped into the Alliance house where Carl was meditating on a beanbag chair on the top floor. Oh, that is different. It's only been like 3 days here, not a whole month of intensive wedding planning. This is good, I like it. Plus the goddess says that Carl found new friends for me to hang out with. Oh, there are new staff too? Hello. Then the cleric was off to the kitchen, intent on meeting the newly arrived staff that Davis had sent over from Drod. Naksha watched the nature cleric and the demons immediately get into an argument as Lotus tried adding ingredients to whatever they were cooking, but it looked more like they were insulted than actually angry. They sent cooking-obsessed obsession demons to work the kitchen. This is bad news for Lotus. The black dragon chuckled. Yeah, they're not going to be as flexible with their recipes as Tessa is. But this place is spotless. I think that they send a caretaker as well. We should ask Carl how many people he hired while we were away. Dana agreed. Beside her a gargoyle made a chirping laugh and Dana knew that it wouldn't be just a handful of party staff, cooks and cleaners for the Alliance house. It was time to go find Carl. But before she headed upstairs to see what he was doing, she checked the guild roster. That would tell her much more easily if there were new people. New guild members 24. New guild employees 86. Now she definitely had some questions about what he had been doing while they were gone. Chapter 1151. The Art of Mana. Welcome back, my love. Did you ladies have a good trip? Carl greeted Dana as she walked up the stairs. We did. The wedding is set for 1 month from today, well 29 days. I see that you were busy while we were gone. You found all sorts of new members and employees. Dana replied. Carl held his arms open wide, encouraging Dana to sit on his lap while they talked. I did. The employees are formerly from a village in Drod that was having issues with their neighbors. They're taking care of the magical plants in the tiny world. The extra guild members are all sculptors, tailors, and blacksmiths. Most of the tailors didn't become guild members, they're employees, but we did add one to the guild roster just for the chance to learn more from Ray. I will have to get her to go see them now that you're all back. Are you happy with how all the plans went? Still need to change anything? Carl asked as Dana settled down on his lap and leaned against his chest. No, we covered everything to perfection. I know that you weren't there for it, but we had Ray, Remy, and Kara, so it still felt like we were getting your input. They know you pretty well. Carl laughed at her response. Not only did they know him well, they could check his thoughts to see if he objected to random ideas. Despite the distance, they weren't cut off from their link. You all returned just in time. The winter social is in a few days and the Guild Alliance is eager to get to show off. I've made you ladies some new decorative accessories using the materials from the monthly delivery of goods that the last Challengers Guild dropped off. They came out very well and the master sculptors put in some overtime so that they would be ready when you all returned. Carl explained. He smiled when Dana squirmed in his lap, turning to face him properly. You didn't do anything crazy, did you? She demanded. Of course not. I only created a new set of accessories. Totem rank epic grade. They're impressive, but I have made dozens more necklaces at that quality since you've been gone. Most of the Mythic team will be wearing them to the social to show off the fact that the Alliance has mastercrafters, but I'm told that it is as much a fashion show as it is a social event, so Ray is going to love it. Dana smiled. It had been a good month to be Ray. Is there anything in particular that you would like for me to make you? I know that Ray has plans for all of the major events, but not every event needs to be perfectly designed to Ray's taste. Carl suggested. Dana winked, then kissed his chin and whispered in his ear. The events I'm thinking of don't need clothing. I've missed you. Carl disagreed. Unwrapping his Dana was half the fun. He wrapped an arm under her thighs and stood up, then opened a portal to their bedroom. Ladies, we will see you all tomorrow. Lotus, the tiny world's entrance, is open in the Gargoyle Garden not far from the portal to Drod. If you want to meet the rest of the employees, that is. Dana laughed as Carl's hand began working the buttons on her top before they were even through the portal, and then she sighed in relief as they were finally alone again. Soft silk slid down her arms, then vanished into her inventory as Carl removed it from her body. She had always been weak to his touch, but today the effect was on an entirely new level. Every touch sent shivers through her body, and the moment that his tongue caressed her skin making gentle swirls as Carl kissed his way from her neck downward, her mind went completely blank. Dana mewled in pleasure as Carl showed her just how much he had missed her presence, but her mind betrayed her before she could tell him the same. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the pleasure washed over her and her consciousness faded. The next thing she knew, she was under the covers draped across Carl, and the sunlight was streaming in their window, meaning that he had brought her to the Drod Guild house, not to their room in the Alliance house. What exactly was that last night? She muttered to herself, blinking the sleep out of her eyes. Carl rumbled in amusement beneath her. Well, if you don't know, then I've been doing my job all wrong. Dana swatted his chest. Not that, you big idiot. It was like my whole body was electrified and my mind went blank, then I just passed out. I've never felt anything like it before. Carl paused, carefully reviewing everything that had happened the evening before. He had been meditating to improve his understanding of the fundamental rule of mana manipulation when the ladies returned, so maybe that had something to do with it? A moment of focus brought him back to that post-meditative state with energy flowing through him, but Dana had no response. However, when he ran his hand across her belly, she moaned in pleasure and Carl felt the energy in her body shift. That was it. He was unconsciously altering the mana in her body to follow his will, but the effect was stronger than she could handle. So if he was going to continue using the trick, he would have to practice. Does this count as learning a new technique? Opal asked from her space. That depends on whether he can turn it into a named skill or if he just turns Dana into a puddle while trying. Remy replied. Carl tuned the pair out. If they wanted to be nosy, he would just ignore them. Besides, turning this into a skill just might make him the most popular man on the planet if he taught it to others. Chapter 1152. Missed you. By lunch, Dana was pleading for mercy and beginning to lose control of her beast form transformation. The instincts that had been imparted to her from the Stonefur divine fox magic used in her advancement demanded that she transform and dig her claws into Carl to make sure he didn't escape, but her human mind knew that he wasn't planning to go anywhere. Not when he was having so much fun tormenting her in all the best ways. Stop. Let me rest and eat. Your dedication to training is commendable, but we're not all superhumans. Dana complained, then nipped at Carl's chest before transforming back into human form. Fine, but I'm warning you, I will perfect that technique before our wedding night. Carl carried her to the shower, then realized that her legs would not support her, so they were going to have to shower in this position, then he would carry her down to breakfast. You know that the bride needs to survive until the wedding, right? She looks exhausted and she's only been back for half a day. Tessa joked when Carl carried Dana down to lunch. I will work on that. Training mana control got a bit out of hand. Carl agreed. Tessa smirked, then gestured for the kitchen staff to bring out the food. Well, you're right on time for breakfast anyhow. The bread just cooled enough to cut. Ophelia made a vague gesture. There is a lot of new equipment in the guild storage. What's that all about? Like a lot of new equipment. Carl chuckled. Check out the workshop in Drod. I did some renovations and we got just a few new workers. Sculptors, blacksmiths, and tailors to go with our runecrafters. So we've got more people working? Now that makes sense. At least there is a chance that the gear orders will get fulfilled. I see that Sapphire has been busy as well. She has made quite the variety of accessories, all with slightly different enhancements. But I do notice that they're all blue. She's only upgrading blue items. Ophelia laughed. Carl checked the inventory and chuckled. Indeed. Some robes and armor, mostly accessories. Fortunately, we have lightning, water, and fire gems in blue for her to work with. It shouldn't limit her range of enchantments too much if she wants everyone to know that a blue dragon made them. Carl also noticed that all the items were totem ranked despite the dragon being at the mythical rank. She was actually focusing on what they were intending to sell and not just testing the limits of her skill. She might have kept a few other pieces for herself, but what was in the inventory was all appropriate for sale. I should put these up in the Guild Alliance listings so that members know that we've got them for sale. Carl sighed. Dana turned on his leg to look up at him. I think it's time that I got a trade skill as well. All the new hires are becoming experts, but the core group has still been holding out, and I'm not sure that there is a good reason for that. Wait, we have an idea. One of the Lala bunnies shouted from the back door of the house. What's up? Dana asked, patting the girl's head as she ran up. I have a cooking trade skill book. You can do the twirl whoosh mishmash thing and make a new skill, right? Ultra mega super cooking, she exclaimed. Give me that book, Hawk demanded. You want to cook? Carl asked, shocked. It is the art of using fire to turn mice into better mice. Hawk replied in a sage voice. He had a good point, but what he actually wanted to master was the art of barbecue, not the entire discipline of cooking. If I use the book, it's gone. But I can teach others. So let me pay you. How much do you want? Carl asked. The bunny smirked. For advancement potions. Just enough that the bunnies get ahead of the boys by a rank? Carl confirmed, and she bobbed her head happily. Well, I guess it would encourage them to work hard to catch up to their bunnies. Alright, I will give you 4 advancement potions as soon as Remy can make them. The cooking skill book vanished and Tessa gave Carl a confused look. Who wanted to be a cook? Kara? I can't see it being Thor or Opal. Maybe Hawk? Carl smiled. Yes, Hawk. Cooking is a fire-related skill after all. But now that Hawk had cooking, Carl saw what Lala was talking about. If he combined runecrafting with cooking, he got mystic cooking. Did anyone want to be? Unfortunately for the Lala bunnies, they've already got a trade skill, so it can't be them. Perhaps our new chef? The obsession demon gave a fist pump in celebration. She was obviously not going to say no to an advanced version of her obsession. Carl held out a hand and she came over to put her head under it while Carl activated the "Follow me, little one." Champion Carl offers knowledge, skill, mystic cooking. Will be transferred to the culinary connoisseur Callisto. Yes. First person with the new cooking skill. She cheered. Then she held out her hand and a new cookbook appeared in it. Alright, ladies. Let's start getting prepped for dinner. I have new recipes to work with, Callisto announced. Dana laughed as the cook ran back to the pantry and started grabbing stuff out. Hey, I want to cook too, Lotus complained. You're sure? No changing after you pick. Carl reminded her. Me change from a specialty in making pastries and sweet things? Lotus asked in a sarcastic tone. You're right. That answer should have been obvious. Champion Carl offers knowledge, skill, mystic cooking. Will be transferred to the healing tree Lotus. Yes. Oh, so many ideas. You can add short-term buffs to food. I can have healing buff pie. Lotus cheered, then ran to join Callisto in the pantry. They were going to be eating well this week. He should teach the skill to the Abbeys in Drod as well. Chapter 1153. Ophelia likes leather. Dana shook her head in dismay at Lotus' excitement. The Alliance members weren't going to know what hit them when they came to ask for healers for the Overlord-ranked dungeons. If they thought that Ray making them change clothes was extreme, just wait until they had to test Lotus' new baking experiments. Though, that was probably still less extreme than letting Remy test experiments on them. At least Lotus was going to be making things intended to be edible. I will take the Runemaster skill. That way we can work together. Dana insisted. Carl nodded and granted her 2 skills. Runemaster and Skill Book. Both of those skills were going to be useful to her in the near future because they were planning to sell skills to help others advance. Plus, she had skills that Ray wanted and those would have to be taught by book. Some of the skills Ray was going to be incompatible with, but she had high hopes for Greater Golem, and a few of Dana's new sword skills. Golem duplication was a wonderful skill. Carl quickly double-checked that he had given the skill back to Dana and made a new mental note to give her the extra copy of the book. Though now she could make a copy for herself. Anyone else want a trade skill? We can probably arrange the majority of them. Carl suggested. Naksha shook her head, as did Tessa. But Ophelia looked like she had a plan. I think I want to try tailoring. Well, leatherworking. There aren't nearly enough female berserker clothing options on this continent. If we increase the fashionability, we could get more berserkers. She decided. Carl chuckled. Well, it's easy enough to create berserkers from warriors with a skill transfer. We might even be able to make more bear totem berserkers if we do it right. If we teach them beast form and then berserk terror, they should get an animal totem berserker that matches their beast form. Ophelia chuckled. That sounds like a lot of fun. Making all the warriors holy sorts is just too boring, and it will lead to another version of the same issue where everyone has the same skills. Just slightly better skills. But if you make some of them berserkers or rangers, it should cut down on the issues a little. Champion Carl offers knowledge, skill, runic leatherworking. Will be transferred to the cuddle bear Ophelia. Ophelia smiled as she accepted the skill. It wasn't master tailoring like Ray had learned, and she could put her own runes on things, but she would be more limited in the items that she could put bonuses on. That still wasn't bad. She wanted to make more items for berserkers, and there was nothing more berserker than leather pants and furs. Heavy armor was a good defensive measure, but it really cramped your style. Ray smiled at Ophelia. There were spider tailors in Drod now and an Ophelia in Xylaz. She could go back and forth working with both to turn out a wonderful new line of clothing for the guild. Well, now we've got new skills, but the same issue. We need to get everyone ready for the winter social event. It's a huge party and the Alliance will be using it to show off. Carl reminded them. Ophelia nodded. Plus we get to show off. Forget that we're making all the accessories. The world should know that the Darklight Host really is an enviable guild to be in. Matilda will send her vampire to join us for the party. She's busy doing things, but Tiffany isn't. Kara added. Just remind her that we will be decorating her vampire to match. I know that the old dragon likes to tease her. Carl informed her. Got it. It shouldn't be a problem. Ray already had most of the outfits that she wanted everyone to wear to the festival prepared, they just needed accessories. But the winter social wasn't just one night, it was 3 whole days of an extended weekend, and they would need different outfits for all of them. At least Ray assumed that they would. The Alliance wasn't putting on an official party of their own like so many others did, but there was the big party in the middle of town, and then she was sure that someone would invite them to events on the other 2 nights. The first one was the most important as the alliances introduced their top members and there was a judged fashion contest. The rest were all networking. While that wasn't the most important aspect to the Darklight host, it would increase the alliance's popularity and set them up for fewer challengers when the next round of dungeon control contests came. We're not going in Darklight host guild colors theme, are we? Ophelia asked. Ray shook her head. No, that wouldn't work with everyone's complexion. It works well on the vampires because they're already so pale. But a black and white outfit with brown fur? I can do so much better. Carl smiled as the two began discussing Berserker and Werbear fashion, then bounced Dana on his knee. Should we get to work as well? Ray has given me a list of fashionable accessories needed for the totems and myths, but there are plenty of accessories waiting to be made from Overlord-ranked materials as well. If you want to make a statement with your skills, now is the perfect time to start. He suggested. Oh, that is a wonderful idea. How about doing necklaces and amulets first? They're the most visible, and having a big bonus on them would be the first thing that others notice. You can take care of the big names. I will do a bunch for the overlords in the Alliance who are already waiting. Dana suggested. Carl smiled. Sapphire was already doing most of the ones for the totem-ranked members, but the accessories fit for the myths would all be the totem-ranked totem-grade items, and those took far longer than average to make. There are pre-made gems from the other runecrafters that you can set into accessories. Making skill gems is taxing, but Sapphire has decided that it's the best way forward for most of the others, as the gem decides the peak quality that the skill can be used at as long as they don't energize it when they finish. You just insert the pre-made gem into the item, then complete the whole thing as one item. Carl explained. With thousands of tiny characters put on every gem, it was possibly the best handwriting training that any of them could get. And with the elemental creation abilities of their sculptors, there was no longer a shortage of Overlord rank and lower elemental gems. Chapter 1154. The Dana Crafter? Carl and Dana were seated at a crafting table that afternoon while Dana went through the basics of her new craft and made accessories for the other overlords in the dungeon raiding teams. All they really need is more damage. That was the first thing that all of us noticed anyhow. The gear they had was mostly mediocre, but when compounded by the fact that they don't have all the extra skills that come with an advanced class, they really suffer. It's like the advanced class skills do much more damage per strike at the same level, even though they're not at the epic skill level of damage. So Dana was focusing on adding skill damage, attack speed, and strength to the items. For the warriors, even when they were using cleave or slash from a distance, the power behind the sword increased the damage done by the attack, so they still gained from increased strength. It was a strange combination, but who were they to argue with the system's math? The accessories were understated at the request of the warriors. Mostly simple silver and iron-colored bracelets, rings, and necklaces. But the sculptors of the guild had come up with the perfect warrior accessory. They had made a sand cast to create skull rings that were black gold on one side, white gold on the other. They were cast small as the material was totem ranked and valuable, but the section black and white was very obviously Darklight host, and the skull ring motif was incredibly popular with the warriors. It was a bit of a waste to use them to make overlord ranked enchantments, but Dana was putting in the effort to make them all epic grade items, so at the very least they were more valuable than the materials. Plus, a single apprentice sculptor could turn out 100 of them in an hour, including buffing them out for use. So after the cast was made, it was more of a side project for the sculpting team to keep the others supplied while they worked on the real masterpieces. Even Carl was wearing one now, but he had given his increased luck and mana recovery to such an insane degree that the system decided it was a totem grade item with only 2 stats. Even inert, the eyes of the ring seemed to absorb the light. On the other hand, he wore the lifelink ring that matched Dana's. Not in appearance, his was a simple mithril ring covered in black runes, but the 2 spells were linked so you couldn't wound Dana without damage transferring to Carl. At least when they were in range. You know, turning out hundreds of these skull rings really is boring. Dana sighed as she poured mana into another item. That is true. The drudgery of making bulk items is way worse than the complexity of making custom items. But think of how happy all the warriors will be. First we upgraded their tanks, and now we're giving them rings that will increase their damage and attack speed. That's what they needed to get through the improved bosses now that they've unlocked hard mode in the dungeon. All that extra loot will be well worth the effort. Have they invited you guys along again? Carl replied. Dana nodded. Yeah, they want us to be part of the hard mode group every week now. The Alliance is skipping this week because of the winter social. But the week after we will be back at it again. Perfect, lots of time for everyone to get prepared. There is no holiday in Drod this week, so they'll get all stocked up. I just hope that the new tailors survive Ray's affection. As I understand it, they're all descended from weaver spiders who specialize in silk production and tailoring. But they're not an aggressive species like the bloodbath spider, so Ray probably terrifies them. Carl joked. Dana frowned. I never thought of that. The majority of the beastkin are only a little terrified of Ray, and that's perfectly normal. But as fellow spiders, it's likely much worse for the tailors. Ray looked up as she sensed Carl talking about her. She was overseeing the clothing production lines in Drod, who were making winter-themed gowns for last-minute sales in the city tomorrow. The Alliance members all had pretty dresses for the event already, so it was time to start spreading her outfits around the city. But Carl had misunderstood the nature of spiders. Weaver spiders and their beastkin offspring were not prey to the bloodbath spiders. They made huge beautiful webs that caught all sorts of prey and naturally offered it to their powerful protectors as tribute. The instinct extended to the beastkin, who turned instantly compliant and submissive when Ray gave them instructions. She had managed to turn the process into a smooth and efficient sweatshop within an hour of arriving, but she was a benevolent mistress. She would only ask them to work a half day. She wasn't too picky about which 12 hours they worked, but overnight was better for sales, so she could take orders and make deliveries while the other species were awake. That also worked for the tailors, as they were nocturnal by nature. They were also being paid very well for their work, and the quality of life here was much better than at home, where the more physical spider species tended to bully them. Not that Ray didn't, but she bullied them as their boss, not for fun. Plus, the only thing that she demanded they do for her was work with the most beautiful high-quality silks. They might not be obsession demons, but their love of crafting silk was nearly as intense. When she was finished tonight, Ray was certain that she would have at least 50 new dresses completed, with only a few in each style, as she had assigned each tailor a different project. She loved it when a plan came together. The blacksmiths and sculptors hardly even noticed that there were tailors taking over 2 of the buildings, one for living and one for working. The Drod Cavern, as they had taken to calling it, was still over half empty, even with all of them present, and the orphanage brimming with kids. 2 buildings full of beastkin, who only came outside once a day, was hardly noticeable. Chapter 1155. Better Nilla Flavor. By the time that the day of the winter social came around, Dana's fingers were thoroughly worn out and ready for a break. But the Guild Alliance looked wonderful. Everyone was rushing about the complex in their finery, looking for final personalized touches, reclaiming items that had been lent out, or meeting friends for a trip into the city. Carl waved as Ray appeared in the room with a smug smile and began dumping a pile of clothes on the table. "Did the morning sales go well?" he asked. Ray clicked her teeth the same way that she clicked her mandibles when she was happy. "Yes, they paid extra to get just the right outfit this morning. I'm nearly sold out. But I don't know what to dress Nilla in. He says that he's not going out, so he hasn't let me style him yet," she explained. "Have you informed him of this yet?" Dana asked. "Multiple times. I informed him that it was non-optional, and I've even made him a more manly umbrella since he objected to the lace parasol. Now come help me pick the right suit to complement my dress. I am taking him for coffee," Ray explained. From the other side of the room, Ophelia laughed. "What's this? Ray is feeling romantic." Ray snorted in amusement. "He has a skill that I want. It hides his presence without hiding his body. But he won't come out, so I can learn it. Today I will make him." "So you intend to make him so uncomfortable that he hides his presence to make people stop noticing him, and then you can study the skill?" Ophelia clarified. Ray nodded. "That was exactly it." "Shouldn't you give him a present for helping?" Ophelia asked. "What do you think that this is?" "That's just decoration. You wanted to decorate him anyhow. How many of the others dress like you? Why don't you get your Carl to make him a skill book in exchange for the training?" The Werbear explained. "Oh, bribery. Yes, that would work too. Carl, do you have a skill book?" Carl chuckled. "In fact, I do. We've been making them for all the totems, and he's a druid, so he's near the top of the list. Give him this book of Terrorize. 10% more damage per rank is a lot of bonus damage for a totem. That should be enough to bribe him to teach you the skill you want." Ray plucked the book from his hands and did a happy twirl. "Thank you. Now ruffles or cobweb lace?" Carl turned to Dana for the answer. "Cobweb lace sleeves. That one there. He will have a shirt under, so the outer coat can be purely decorative. Then give him the red tie that matches his eyes. And these boots. There, that is perfect. Good luck." Ray waved, then gathered all the clothing on the table and vanished. Why does it feel more like Ray has adopted a puppy who didn't know that he was up for adoption than that she's gotten a boyfriend? Ophelia asked. "Because I'm certain that is how she sees him. Don't forget that bloodbath spiders usually kill their mates so that they don't mate with any other female." Carl replied. "Oh right. Forgot about that." A few houses over a girlish shriek shattered the calm as Ray appeared in Nilla's bedroom holding a pile of clothing and a skill book. "Good morning. I brought you an outfit for our coffee date. Put that on, and then I have a business proposal for you. I want your ability to hide your presence, and in exchange for learning it I will give you this book of Terrorize." "How did you even get in here?" "I put up a barrier," the vampire demanded. "Using Night Haunter, of course. I can just walk through the wall. There is no point in blocking the window and the door. Now I think that your dungeon team will love it if you learn Terrorize. That's 80% more base damage on every attack. It really does add up quickly." Ray held up the clothing and gave it a shake, encouraging him to get moving. The coffee had better be worth this. Do you know what time it is? 11 in the morning. That's why I brought the modified umbrella. It's going to be bright on the way to the coffee shop. And that didn't strike you as too early to wake a vampire? He asked. Ray shook her head. I even let you sleep in this morning. 5 whole hours after the sun came up because it's a holiday. We are going to need to have a long talk about biology one of these days. Nilla muttered as he equipped the outfit Ray brought. Then she handed him the book and Nilla began to bounce on the balls of his feet in excitement. This was going to be a huge change for him. A passive skill that would nearly double his base damage output. Then his eyes went vacant as he used the book. He had been pulled into the class change interface and there were actual options there for him. He had gathered 10 other skills that weren't part of his skill tree, mostly warrior skills that could be used by druids. But this was the first time he had options. Blood Druid, Woodland Warlock, Forest Guardian. Oh, that last one was good. It was an advanced druid and it was tanking focused. Plus it had spirit guardians. That sounded like druid golems to him. Take that, mages. With his new class selected, Nilla returned to reality and found Ray waiting for him with an expectant smile. Forest Guardian. A tanking druid with spirit guardians. Should we go and see what they are before we leave? He asked. Ray grabbed him around the waist and moved him to the lawn. Yes, let's see what it gives you. Oh, we should hold betting first. Did you want to tell the others? Nilla laughed at the excited spider. Yes, let's call them outside and give them a chance to wager on what a vampire druid spirit guardian will be. He couldn't predict what the system was going to give him, even if he followed the advice the mages got and focused on what he wanted. Chapter 1156. Winter Social Parade. The guild had already heard their conversation as neither Ray nor Nilla was trying to be quiet. Even Dana and Carl had come out across the street to see the show. They were actually making sure that Ray wasn't abducting the vampire against his will, but from her perspective it looked the same. Everyone, the vampire druid tank Naxarimus Orovius Dante has advanced his class today. He is now a forest guardian. One of his new class skills is a forest guardian. We are now accepting guesses and wagers on what it will come out looking like. Ray declared loudly enough to be heard over the crowd. The crowd cheered for him as a totem rank tank advancing was a big deal. Especially when it was an advancement from druid. Carl waited for the guessing game to end while Dana played with the ring on her finger. She had transformed into fox beastkin form today, and the ring felt strange on her hand, though it still fit perfectly. She wasn't originally going to go out as anything but human. But the dress looked so much better against her fox fur that she couldn't resist. All right, we have our guesses. Now Nilla, please show us the guardian spirit. Ray shouted. She's a surprisingly effective hype person. Dana laughed as Ray made a theatrical reveal gesture toward the vampire. Right? Who knew that was part of her skill set? Carl agreed. And the winner is bears. Ray called as a massive red ethereal bear appeared beside the vampire. Carl was reasonably sure that was not the natural state of a spirit guardian, but as he was a vampire it had been altered by his affinity for blood. It was definitely impressive though. Dana laughed. You know, we can do the same thing for you and Ray when you reveal your greater golems for the first time. Carl chuckled. You know that Rays are going to be bigger, better spiders. He had a point. Ray would be very disappointed if her extra golems were not spiders. The entire population of the Xylaz Guild House came out to join them, and Carl led the procession out of the house to join the gathering in the market where the first selections for the day's fashion shows would be held. The other guilds quickly joined them as everyone was preparing to head out anyhow. It made for a truly impressive group, nearly 1,000 strong, all walking together with most of them in overlord and totem ranked formal wear and exquisitely made accessories. They were attracting attention with every step, and people were coming out of the stores to stare at them as if the guild alliance was a parade. In a way they were, Carl decided. They were almost all wearing something made by Ray with accessories that the Darklight host had enchanted. So they were basically a walking billboard or a parade of trade goods. Look at that. They've done up the whole alliance for the show. Even the staff members are wearing luxury dresses. And trade skill accessories. What the hell? What sort of guild alliance is that? Carl chuckled as he heard the spectators gossiping about the alliance. The first thing that he had all the runecrafters do was make something for themselves. But the most popular items from Drod were the utility items, and that included cooking, cleaning, and other basic tasks. But those weren't items that a normal guild would have here. So seeing all the simple magical rings on the royal ranked staff members of the other guilds was a shock. They couldn't be combat members, there were no dungeons here for them to fight in, and no wild monsters of their rank. So the accessories had to be profession related. A few of the members had even decided to show off a little extra, and they had unequipped items that they were wearing to use them as a show of wealth. With the item worn openly and not equipped, anyone with basic identification skills could see what stats it had. Here where the system was nearly fully active, that meant everyone. It didn't take long for the crowd to recognize that all of the displayed items were made by the same person, and that the person in question was standing with the Guild Alliance escorting a team from his guild in exquisite fashion through the city. Damn, the Nara group managed to get an actual crafting guild on their side. The next round of challenges are going to be brutal. One of the other myths sighed. I heard a rumor that they're changing things next year. Perhaps they'll cap it so that a few of the big guilds don't get all the best dungeons? One of the others, a white dragon cleric, suggested hopefully. The warriors laughed. They couldn't see the king caring enough about what they were doing here on the shores to do that. All that really mattered to him was that people kept coming and the money kept flowing. If you didn't try to take a dungeon entirely off the market, he wouldn't care. Well, if they don't, I can guarantee that the Nara group is getting at least 1 or 2 extra dungeons. In a duel, both Hugo and Dave are monsters. If they're fully decked out in custom-tailored epic gear, they can definitely snag an extra victory. The warrior retorted. Carl smiled as he heard the news. He already knew that would not be an issue this year. The formal announcement was going to be during the festivities tonight when the king of Sholaha came to greet the people and give them a blessing for the upcoming year. Hugo led the column through the city, showing off at all the best spots so that they could say that they were seen and then join the party. But they didn't even have to finish their tour to get noticed. Miss, would you and your partner be interested in joining the judging? We have a category for most stylish gothic outfits, and I believe you would both be contenders. A woman with a clipboard asked. Ray grabbed Nilla and pushed him forward, almost moving him out from under his umbrella as he flailed to keep his balance. Of course we will join the judging. The world needs to see this fashion. Ray agreed. Might I get your names? The volunteer asked. Naxarimus, Orovius, Dante, and Ray Bloodbath. Ray replied. The volunteer froze. Did you say Dante and Bloodbath? Ray nodded happily. That is us. Easy to remember. Chapter 1157. Beasts and Bookstores. What Ray didn't know was that the woman had only now realized that she was a transformed magical beast. So while Nilla's heritage made him vampire nobility, declaring herself as a bloodbath spider at the totem rank was absolutely terrifying for the average citizen. Of course, very easy to remember. Thank you. I will see you at the judging center later. Here are your entry cards. Just show them at any of the contestant entry points and they will show you where to be. Goth, Emo, and Rogue class judging starts at dark. Arriving half an hour early is advisable as the event can be quite crowded. The volunteer explained, recovering from her shock. Ray patted Nilla on the back. We're going to be a big hit. Now are we done walking yet? The coffee is on the next block. The vampire laughed. We can break away from the group. It's not a rule that we all have to stay together, it's just the boss wanting to show off. With that new information, Ray wrapped an arm around Nilla and activated perfect camouflage to step away from the group without being noticed. Some of the totems and myths could surely still see them in the bright daylight, but it didn't disrupt anything as they moved away from the group and into the crowd. Then she deactivated the skill and led the way to the coffee shop. What was your plan for after coffee? Nilla asked, resigned to spending a whole day outdoors. How do you feel about people watching from somewhere up in the tree branches? I can make swinging chairs and an awning. Ray suggested. Nilla laughed. It is prohibited to climb the trees in the park. Otherwise the drunks would break half the branches while showing off for the girls. Ray sighed. In that case, we can just find somewhere out of the sun. A squeaky voice from beside them caught her attention. Miss? Sir? If you would like to be out of the direct sunlight, our winery is doing an afternoon tasting event today. It is held in the aging cellar and the temperature is just right. The mouse beastkin suggested. The vampire and spider smiled at each other. That would be perfect. They agreed in unison. Thor saw Ray drag her living mannequin off and it gave him the same idea. Tessa, why don't we stop for a juice as well? There is a lovely shop there by the beach. He suggested. That started a mass exodus just as they had reached the market, and there were thousands of shops and stalls for the members to visit. Carl nodded to Dave and Hugo, then motioned to a grand stone building marked with magical sigils that Carl knew were supposed to approximate the runes of runecrafting, but which were drawn by someone without the skill. I believe that my lovely bride may enjoy that store, so we will part ways here. He explained. The Mage Tower? Yes, if you've got the budget, it's the best place on the continent to get skill books and rare potions. Other than the Blue Dragon libraries, that is. Hugo agreed. Carl led Dana to the store where a totem-ranked guard stood at either side of the door vetting their potential customers. Champion Miss. Welcome. Please enter, we were hoping that you would visit us today. The guard greeted them. That was a bit startling as they had only just walked out of the Alliance complex half an hour ago. Inside the shop, the lighting was dim but magically even, with no shadows or unreadable covers on the displayed tomes. Each of the most valuable tomes was set into a glass pillar with its own light, creating beams of light in the shop, while the less valuable ones were set along the walls. There was an excited commotion at the back of the shop, and a young demoness came running up to Carl. War Champion, you are earlier than expected. Would you like to join our contest? She asked. Contest? That wasn't what he was here for. It's an inscription contest. We're making skill books winner takes all. I heard from my cousin Ashbringer that you can make them. She explained. That makes sense now. But we had actually come in to shop. Carl replied, and the demon visibly deflated. The shopkeeper cleared his throat and Carl nodded politely for the mythic rank Blue Dragon to speak his mind. If you would like to join them, I can accompany Miss Dana around the shop and then lead her to the reading area. It has a view of the contest tables, and if she should find something interesting but not a usable skill book, she will be able to read while your challenge is ongoing. In order to make them both interesting and punctual, we have put a 1-hour time limit on the contests. It prevents grand magic from being transcribed, but it also allows for rematches. He explained. What are the judging criteria? Carl asked. The most valuable tome copied within 1 hour wins. However, if you can transcribe one that we do not have in stock, it is an automatic round win. No repetition is allowed, but more than one contestant can do the same tome during a round. In that case, first to finish wins. The dragon explained. That sounded like a very Blue Dragon God-approved challenge. Dana waved her hand at Carl. I will let the librarian show me the store you go play with the inscriptionists. Carl nodded. All right, let's see this contest list. Is it a full list of what the store has in stock for skill books? The demoness nodded. It is. There are only so many available skill books after all, right? Carl had forgotten that even here they struggled to get copies of most skills in written form. If you got a rare one, you could make a fortune just lending it to an inscriptionist to make duplicates before you used it. Carl scanned the list and then nodded in satisfaction. Force Slam. The Haint's telekinetic ability was not on the list, and it was nearly as easy to write out as Cleave. Not a particularly complex or powerful skill, but a rare and versatile one. Chapter 1158. Easy win. Carl took a seat and then looked up and saw a writing desk suspended in a glass orb above them. It was covered in incredibly ancient magical runes, and from what Carl could see, it was intended to make all the materials you needed to create a skill book while working at it. That was brilliant. Force Slam wasn't too hard to create, at least for Carl. But his skill wasn't inscription, it was skill book, and it had far fewer conditions for creation but far stricter ones on what books he could make. So he got out suitable ink from Remy's supply stash of plant extracts and grabbed a stack of paper from the middle of the table. On the count of 3, you may begin. The demoness announced. Carl noticed that she wasn't participating, she was the store staff serving as referee for the event. He should have known that a wrath demon was not suited to be an inscriptionist. The first time that the pen dripped and ruined a page with an ink blot, they would lose it. Carl quickly began to write out the small booklet that was Force Slam, and then sent a surge of mana through the papers with Skill Book to form the cover and activate the tome. Finished. He spoke quietly and looked up from his work. One of the others was already finished, and Carl smiled as he saw Rend on the table in front of them. You only win if you finish in an hour. The dragonkin mouthed silently. So that was the trick. He was wagering that anyone who picked a skill book more complex and valuable than Rend would not finish on time and would therefore lose by default. Carl checked his watch. He had taken nearly 40 minutes just to write out Force Slam. If he had chosen anything more difficult, he really might have gone over. They sat silently browsing the magazines on the table as the others worked. When the last pen was lifted, the hour was long past, and the last few to finish were more than 10 minutes past the timer. But nobody stopped them, as the contest was a winner-take-all format, and nobody needed a half-finished skill book. They had all chosen basic warrior and mage skills. Cleave, Rend, Lightning Bolt, Magic Armor, and a copy of Stomp. That must have had an error somewhere as it failed to activate. The Blue Dragon came out from the sitting area where he had been waiting with Dana. Excellent work, everyone. We will fix the error in Stomp for the winner. Now let's see what the pricing chart says. He announced. We have one copy of Magic Armor that was finished over the time limit, as well as Stomp, which has failed to activate. So in third place we have Rend. Then Lightning Bolt and Magic Armor tied in value, with Lightning Bolt being completed first. However, our winner for this round is Force Slam, which is not currently in the store's inventory. The spell is part of the Druid arsenal under certain skill builds, but I have no record of it having ever passed through our stock. He announced. The other inscriptionists cheered, and an older dragonkin rushed out to begin flipping through the Stomp book looking for the error. They cast some sort of spell that erased a portion of the page and then wrote a new paragraph. That let the book successfully complete, and the final skill book formed. Now would the winner like to keep his winnings? Or perhaps trade them for store credit? The Blue Dragon asked. It didn't take a genius to see that he was hoping for store credit as an answer. Dana, did you find anything good? Carl asked. She nodded. I did. I found a whole collection of mystic cooking cookbooks for Lotus and an alchemy book for Remy. The shopkeeper looked a bit sheepish. As it happens, her advancement through multiple mage-related classes has given her a much larger repertoire of skills than our shop stocks. Carl politely didn't mention that she could make skill books just as easily as he could. That wasn't information that anyone else knew outside the core of the Darklight host. So if it could be kept secret, he wouldn't have to worry about people bothering Dana about it. That is a pretty impressive haul. Finding just one new tome is difficult enough, but to find them for 2 different specialties, this truly is the best stocked shop around. Shopkeeper, I will trade my winnings for store credit. It should cover our purchases here today, and anything left over we will save for the next time a guild member needs a new skill. Carl replied. That is excellent news. A new spell for the shop is a huge accomplishment. To prevent unfairness, winners have to sit out the next round. But you are welcome to peruse our shelves. Not everything is a skill book. We also have fiction, history, theory, education, and many other books available. He offered. Oh, that is a good idea. Our guild library is pretty good, but I bet that we don't have some of these. Now that we've got Sapphire looking after it, we should work on expanding the inventory. Carl agreed. Even if her presence was giving the nobles of Drod heart palpitations. The mythic librarian Sapphire? The blue dragon in charge of the shop asked. Carl nodded. She joined our guild recently after accepting a trade skill. She is currently at our Drod guild house doing inventory on the guild library there. We loaded it with surplus books from a historic bookstore, and the variety is somewhat unusual. As were the notes written in some of the educational tomes. Most of them were good advice, but according to the dragon, some of the students making the notes had clearly been failing their classes, and it was better for everyone if the books were scrubbed of bad advice before anyone else read them. But Mick said that she spent most of her time with a romance book in one hand as she sorted through educational tomes using a magical skill. Chapter 1159. Diversified Guild Library. Over the course of the next hour, Carl and Dana followed the shopkeeper around while sending messages to Sapphire about books that she wanted for the guild library. He had no shortage of them, and there were multiple floors of more mundane titles away from the main showroom floor, which was reserved for the skill books that the vast majority of his patrons were here to find. Is it your intention to start a library of your own? Public one, I mean? He asked as the list of titles neared 500 and the store credit for the traded skill books was running low. Carl shook his head. No, we were thinking that we would reserve the guild library for the guild members and their children. That way they have somewhere that they can go to gain knowledge. The dragons have reference material, and we can stock skill books for them to advance their classes. As a blue dragon, you may or may not have already heard about the success of our experiments. The shopkeeper nodded eagerly. The librarians at totem rank and higher all share a group chat. Lady Sapphire already shared the success of the Paladin Progression Project and the confirmation that it can work for other classes. If that really is all that is needed to unlock advanced classes for all these warriors, the research in that project will revolutionize the world itself. It is wonderful, brilliant new knowledge. The man was nearly vibrating with excitement, a state that they saw Lotus in nearly every day. But it was unavoidable for dragons and dragon clerics when their divine aspect was mentioned in conversation. Indeed it is. We're going to be doing more experiments later, both with base warriors to see if there are other suitable classes to advance them into and to other classes to improve their versatility and damage output. It is our theory that the difficulty of many of the dungeons is not so much due to the gear limits or they would give better loot. Instead, we have a theory that the dungeons are only difficult because of poor group composition. If the totems entering had a properly diversified set of skills, it is possible that they would have a much easier time passing the obstacles. Carl explained. The shopkeeper smiled. Well, you have a point. Like the corrupted Naga swamp. The monsters are all under the effect of a zombie curse, and it affects the members of the raiding party as well. It is nearly impossible to even enter without a shaman, as their area purification totem poles are the only effective countermeasure against the corruption. Well, unless you have someone with consecrated ground, or another holy magic purification area effect. Carl chuckled. And that's not common outside the upper ranks of the dragon clergy. We do have a member who has it. Well, at least 2 that I have seen use it. But with its limited radius, I can see how it would be difficult to do a dungeon fight like that. The old dragon turned and plucked a book from a shelf nearly 2 stories above their heads. Add this to your library as well. It's advanced totem crafting for shamans. Not a skill book, but if they're talented they will be able to make multiple new types of them with the lessons in this book. He wasn't even finished speaking when Remy appeared in her shimmering golden ball gown and stretched out all 4 arms for it. Librarian, this is Remy, one of my bonded partners. And a Naga shaman queen. Like the blue dragons, she also has an insatiable thirst for new knowledge. And this book is perfectly suited to her class. Carl explained. The dragon smiled and let her have it, then smiled as Remy cheered and raced off to the reading area with her new treasure. Looks like we've lost Remy for the day. But she did make it outside, and that is an accomplishment for her. Dana noted. She is not a social person. Usually Naga queens are quite outgoing. The dragon asked. Dana shook her head. She loves people. But if you get her focused on shaman spells or alchemy, she will lose entire days at a time. Naga don't actually need to sleep, you see. The shopkeeper nodded. Blue dragons are known to sleep only once a century, resting for a few years at a time. However, most of us prefer to keep to a daily schedule so that we don't miss years' worth of news. Do you have a warded reading room? I suspect that she will want to test totems as she learns them, and that might not be safe with a whole table full of inscriptionists sitting nearby. Carl asked. Of course. There is a practical learning area at the back with private rooms and comfortable chairs. I do believe that the serpent-friendly one is unoccupied. He replied. Dana giggled. Serpent-friendly? He nodded. With large warming beanbag chairs which are better suited to serpentine bodies and cooler body temperatures. One of the staff members was already leading Remy in that direction as the distracted Naga read the intro chapter to her new educational tome. The shop is a 24-hour establishment. Just let us know if your friend is needed for something and we will go fetch her. The blue dragon whispered. You really do know your clientele well. Thank you, librarian. Perhaps we will come back later with another new skill book or two for you. Everyone loves new skills. You are both welcome anytime. Thank you for your patronage. He agreed. Carl led Dana back out of the mage tower, leaving Remy to her own devices for the day. Would you like to sightsee? Or perhaps get a snack? Ray has dragged Nilla to the coffee shop with plans for a wine tasting. Kara and Lotus are at a bakery with Ophelia, and Thor has taken Tessa to the beach to sunbathe. Carl asked. They let a chaos badger in a bakery? Willingly? With a green dragon cleric? Dana replied incredulously. Carl laughed. Actually, Kara arriving with an overlord-ranked green dragon priestess makes it somewhat more believable, don't you think? As much as she hated to admit it, he was right. Seeing Lotus and Kara together was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The presence of one explained the presence of the other no matter where they were. Chapter 1160. Wrong door? Dana smiled up at Carl. I have an idea. People are certain to notice soon that you are the one who made the vast majority of what the Guild Alliance is wearing. So if we stay in the market, you're just going to get swarmed by people wanting to make an order. If we go somewhere a bit more private and exclusive, then only a few people will be able to get to you and we can lounge around for the afternoon. I think that a day of people watching is what we need. Both as a way to show off Ray's fashion and just to see more of the residents of the city. There has to be something here that we haven't seen before, and they can't all be dumb enough to start trouble. One of the bookstore workers looked up at them alarmed. Are you expecting trouble? Carl shook his head. Not long ago someone challenged to try to forcibly claim members of our guild as their own. I don't think that anyone will be so brazen today during the festival. The clerk looked immensely relieved. That is true, very few people would challenge during the winter social for anything less than a direct and unforgivable insult. The Immortal Regent is in the city today and he takes a very dim view of such duels. Especially ones that don't have an excellent reason. She explained. Thank you. That is good to know. I will avoid doing anything hot-tempered. Carl replied with a wink. He didn't look like the sort that would start trouble to her, but then the young magic demon wasn't an expert on all things totem ranked and higher. The people with that much power had their own set of rules, and they didn't always make sense to anyone else, especially to demons who spent most of their life in libraries with the blue dragons. Carl led Dana out the door and found himself in the lobby of a restaurant instead of in the street as expected. Well, that is new. Did we use the wrong door? He muttered. Lord Carl and Lady Dana? This way, please. Your companions are waiting. The host informed them. The man was clearly a dragon of some sort, but in his humanoid form Carl couldn't tell what sort. Which was unusual on its own. Perhaps he wasn't one of the chromatic dragons? It would explain his lack of the distinctly divine aura that they gave off. The host led them through the posh restaurant filled with guests in their winter social finest and sat them at a table where two elderly powerhouses were glaring at each other. Immortal Regent Supreme Lady Matilda. It's a pleasure to meet you both again. Carl announced with a slight bow for the duo. Dana curtsied politely and Matilda giggled. You should stay in that form more often, you are absolutely adorable. But for your wedding, definitely human. That's the way to go. Both of you. The kiss scene won't look right if you don't. Beastkin kisses are all sloppy, not at all photogenic. Azof rubbed his temples and Carl felt a pang of sympathy for him. He had been dealing with Matilda for tens of thousands of years, and he was the only friend she could possibly have who might understand her frame of reference. After a second, he forced a smile onto his face. Congratulations both of you on your upcoming wedding. It appears that my attendance is assured, no need for an RSVP invitation. Matilda smirked and the immortal sighed. Please join us for lunch. There is a fashion show here at the restaurant for high society, and I thought it would be best to invite the both of you as there are both male and female categories and the artist herself is preoccupied. Matilda explained. Her chaotic aura was remarkably subdued today, nearly as low as Kara's. It felt off to Carl, but to the others in the room it was surely a kindness. A passing waitress heard her words and paused. Is the lady intending to join the show? I can take your details now. Just your name, Guild Alliance, and the name of your designer with any affiliation that they might have. Having a divine fox among the contestants would be a huge bonus for the show, and her boss would definitely give her a bonus for signing Dana. Dana of the Dark Light Host. Part of the Nara Group Alliance. My dress was made by Lady Ray Bloodbath of the Dark Light Host and the accessories by Carl of the Dark Light Host, who was standing beside me. The waitress blinked, slowly mesmerized by Dana's voice, then pure joy spread across her expression. Wonderful, thank you, Lady Dana. Sir, were you wishing to enter as well? Or will you allow the lady to represent your brand? She asked. Matilda clicked a fingernail on the table. He will enter. I want to start sending out wedding invitations today, and only a few people truly understand who the bride and groom are. Understood, Supreme Lady. The waitress squeaked, then scurried off. Matilda sighed. I have done so much to restrain my aura, and still my identity terrifies people. Such a shame. But after the show, I can guarantee that the celebrity portion of our guest plan will be taken care of. Is there a particular reason that we need to be famous? Dana asked as Carl adjusted her seat for her, then joined her at the table. Of course. You'll be... No, wait, I can't tell you that part yet. It would ruin the surprise. But yes, it's important that you be considered famous in Sholaha before you get bored with being here. Azaf sighed. What she's trying to say is that she intends to meddle in your future for better or worse. For your sakes, I hope that it ends up for the better, but there are no guarantees with chaos. Carl gave the long-suffering immortal a pat on the shoulder. Don't worry too much about it. I've gotten fairly used to chaotic influences on my life. Azaf shook his head. If Carl thought that the Chaos Badger was a chaotic influence, he had only begun to grasp the true nature of the Chaos Dragon. But at least he was an avatar of the World Dragon. The Planeswalker ability would let him come home if he accidentally ended up in an adjacent reality. It might take him time to get enough skill points to acquire the skill, but he would be able to return one day. Chapter 1161. Why only Carl? Azaf examined the odd pair. They were well suited to each other and their energies resonated on very similar wavelengths. But only Carl was showing the sort of improved mental and soul power that would be expected of the power matrix. Had neither of them thought to ask Dana to start on it yet? Sure, she was only an overlord, but she would be a totem soon enough, and it was never too soon to start preparing for the mythic rank. Carl, I see that you've improved your power matrix to the 27-pointed focus. But Miss Dana hasn't started yet. Was there a reason for the delay? He asked. That's not a class-exclusive ability? Carl asked. Azaf facebombed in dismay. No, not at all. All mage-type classes need to do it to reach mythic rank. The stronger the power matrix, the faster their mana and soul power will grow. In theory, most species can make it to mythic rank if they can perfect the 9-focus formation. Some won't live long enough at that rate though. But there is no restriction on what classes can use it, only on the mental fortitude and mana levels needed to start. Oh right. You're from Keptumia continent, the Golden Dragon Nation, right? They probably still think it's only monks who can use it since they start with the skill. He realized. Carl nodded reluctantly. Indeed, he had thought it was an exclusive thing and that mages had their own ways. That is fine, we can fix that right away. Your personal matrix isn't suitable for her anyhow. You used... What is that? Azaf replied. Supreme Lady Matilda. I used her as the template for my matrix. The instructions said that I should use a greater being whose form I could clearly focus upon to shape the matrix, and she's the most powerful being I have ever personally encountered. Carl explained. Matilda smirked at her ancient companion. See, you were all worried that he wouldn't be able to comprehend chaos, and here he is using it to shape his entire power matrix. It's actually not a bad likeness. How did you even get to see her dragon form? Azaf asked. She showed me once, but mostly I just asked Kara. The two of them mentally chat quite frequently, and the badger has a vivid imagination. Carl explained. Azaf flicked his finger, casting a spell over Carl. Your fundamental rule focus is mana manipulation, excellent choice for immortality. But I see that you have an affinity for fire, holy magic, and chaos? To even touch on the truth of chaos is unusual. But it does explain how you can comprehend her form well enough to use it as a focus. I will put an image into Miss Dana's mind along with the fundamentals of the skill to improve her power matrix. I see that her mind is better attuned to the god of magic, and that is a power matrix that I know well, so I will grant that knowledge. It should help keep the two of you balanced after your wedding. He explained. Dana's expression went blank as Azaf cast a spell and Carl watched curiously. So you have a skill similar to mine? That teaches skills to others? He asked. Azaf shook his head. No, what I have is memory transfer. It just shows them my memories of a thing. In this case, lectures and the textbook on how to implement the process. Matilda nodded. He literally wrote the book on how to use the power matrix to reach immortality. The actual textbook that the Dragon Isles use. Dana smiled as she slowly began to comprehend what Azaf was teaching her. That is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I understand so much better now. She gasped. Azaf nodded. Now you just need to grasp one of the fundamental rules in a way that truly suits you, and you will be on your way to mythic status and immortality. That sounds like it is easier said than done. I see it in your notes and I understand the concept, I just don't really get the rules themselves, if that makes sense. Dana agreed. Azov's gentle smile said that was inevitable. If the truth of the universe was so easily imparted, we would all be immortals. Though if the two of you spent a bit of time in the immortal realm, you might grasp them more quickly. I would not recommend that. At this point, the immortal realm is not a safe place and those not immortals are not considered people there. He explained. Carl frowned. Is that why they don't come here to assist with the issues in this world? Azov shook his head. No, the immortals who live here and the Supreme Lady cast a spell to hide this world so that they didn't come to raid the world for slaves. Otherwise, the issues that this world has would be the least of its current concerns. Well, that's not disturbing at all. Is the power disparity of the immortals really that large? Carl asked. Matilda shrugged. Well, the actual immortal ranked residents aren't considered much of anything either. Especially if they're older. The ones with power in the immortal realm are the legends and demigods. Few reach that level, even fewer of them die. So they've all carved out their own kingdoms in the immortal realm. Once you get there, you will understand. The immortal realm isn't a single planet like this is. Instead, the more powerful beings create worlds, continents, or even just cities floating in the void. Once you become an immortal, sustaining yourself off your internal mana isn't a problem, so moving in the void becomes possible. You already know the basic skill of survival in the immortal realm, the ability to make a tiny world. Just expand that by 100 with fully formed rules and you will be close to what the lesser domains in the immortal realm are like. The dragon paused, then smiled. You know, it might do you good to visit just to learn the feeling of truly powerful mana. I will tell you when you're ready. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.